I have spent decades now gaming and working in front of screens of all shapes and all sizes, from hunching over a laptop, then hooking up to bigger monitors, and then multiple monitors, bigger multiple monitors, and more recently, big ultra-wide monitors. I've made videos on these monitors, and a lot of the comments on those videos are asking me, of course, for which one would I recommend. So in this video, I want to help you decide for yourself which monitor is the best for you and talk about each of the key areas to consider when buying a gaming monitor. Now, firstly, the one most people start with is, of course, the physical shape and size of the monitor. Now, the most common one is 16:9, which is the same format that pretty much all games, all TV shows and movies are shot in. And 16:9 screens typically come in 22, 24, 27, 32 and 55-inch sizes. And then next up, you have 21:9 screens, which are referred to as ultra-wide screens. And they are typically in either 29, 34, 38 and 40-inch sizes. And then we have my favourite category of all these monitors for an all-rounder, the super ultra-wide monitors. And these are 32:9 and come in typically 49 and 57-inch sizes. Now, there are a couple of other formats outside of these. You've got 16:18 and 32:10, which are much less common. But this is where there can be a bit of a split opinion depending on what games you're playing and also why you are playing them. Now, for most casual gamers, it's likely you might want to go up in size to play in, beautifully high resolution on bigger screens. And if it's a simulator game like, driving or flying, then it is definitely the ultra wides. But for anyone who thinks of themselves as a bit of a pro or semi-pro gamer, then smaller sizes also have their advantages. Smaller screens means less physical movement required to, look for enemies. Whereas on the other end of the scale, on, super large screens, you have to physically turn your head to see something. So the chances of you then missing something because you're, facing the wrong way are much higher. Now, this will also depend on how far away you are sat from your monitor. I've seen some crazy, pro gamers, I guess, literally eyeball their screens. But generally speaking, the smaller the screen, the more affordable. But things like the resolution and the higher refresh rate, then the more expensive. So let's talk about the refresh rate. So what the refresh rate does is essentially it smooths out the motion on your display. If you were to pick up and drag at a window, it is the difference of seeing a blur when moving the window to, actually seeing the window move around. Now, typically monitors start off at around 60 hertz refresh rate and then go up to 120, 240, 480 and even higher than that. Now, in gaming, this is really important because going from, say, a 60 hertz display to a 240 hertz display, gameplay footage is just much, much smoother and way more enjoyable to play, and it just allows you to be more accurate with your gameplay. But beware that right now, if you are gaming from a console like a PS5 or an Xbox, those consoles currently top out at 120 hertz, so won't be able to benefit from anything above 120. And so for those of you buying a monitor with, crazy high refresh rates of 240 hertz or even higher, just be sure that your gaming PC is actually powerful enough, because right now, especially at the high resolutions, only the latest and most powerful PCs will be capable of actually driving those refresh rates. But if anything, buying a higher refresh rate monitor today only really future-proofs you more as technology, evolves in time and as you upgrade your gaming PC. But, and before we get into this, there are two separate numbers here. You've got the monitor's refresh rate, which is how fast your monitor can refresh its image. And then you've got the frames per second, which is how many frames per second your PC can send to your monitor. Now, there is a feature called adaptive refresh rate or variable refresh rate, otherwise known as VRR. And what this does is it allows your monitor to dynamically adjust its refresh rate in line with how fast your PC can send those new frames. And so you'll be able to see that your in-game FPS roughly matches your monitor's refresh rate. Now, you'll also notice that many monitors advertise themselves as NVIDIA G-Sync or AMD FreeSync compatible. So like I said, refresh rate is essentially how many times a second your monitor is refreshing your screen. And then the FPS, which is how many times your PC is able to generate a new frame. But these two don't always line up, and that is what G-Sync and FreeSync does. And through a combination of VRR and G-Sync and FreeSync, it reduces things like screen tearing, which is when your PC tries sending a new frame to the monitor when it's halfway through a refresh cycle. Now, if you want a more detailed technical explanation of this, there is a fantastic video from Monitors Unboxed, which I'll just link down below this video just to explain that for you in a bit more detail. The third thing that you want to check out when buying a gaming monitor specifically is the resolution, combined with the pixels per inch. Now for 16:9 screens, you get 1080p screens, otherwise known as Full HD, which run at a resolution of 1920 by 1080. There's 1440p screens, which run at 2560 by 1440. Then you've got 4K screens, which run at a resolution of 3840 by 2160. And there's also like 5K, which is super high resolution on these smaller screens, and that starts at 5120 by 2880. Now the problem starts when you go bigger and you go wider. Since the larger you go with the same resolution, those pixels are just getting bigger and bigger on the display. And when that happens, you'll start to see like the individual pixels on text and in game, which can be a really horrible gaming experience. Now this is where the PPI, or pixels per inch, comes in. Now if your PPI is too low, then everything just looks blocky and just like ginormous, and you can see those individual pixels. Now if the PPI is good, then everything will look crisp, will look sharp. But for gaming specifically, the higher resolution and higher the pixels per inch, well then the harder your graphics card has to work to drive games at those high resolutions. So like my warning earlier about the refresh rate, it's really a combination of like all of these. Now if you have say a 480 hertz 4K gaming monitor, you'd better be running one of the very, very latest and very best highest spec gaming PCs with something, like a 5090 graphics card, or you won't get anywhere near what your monitor is actually capable of. Now I'm going to link to a website with a table that shows you what is a good expected PPI for all the various sizes and resolutions, because it's, again, kind of too much to go in through in this video, so I'll link that in the description down below. Now next is another important one, which is the type of technology the screen uses. Now you may have heard of terms like TN and VA and IPS, Mini LED, OLED, QD OLED. Now TN, VA and IPS panels are all types of LCD panels. You've got TN panels, which will be more affordable. They'll probably be the most affordable ones you can buy, both with fast response times and high refresh rates. So they're very, very good for affordable options for gaming. VA panels will be brighter and have better contrast than TN panels. Now, a great example of this is this Xiaomi monitor just behind me, which costs just £240. It is a VA panel, 21:9, 34 inches, has a 1440p resolution with a 180 hertz refresh rate, has a 1 millisecond response time, a 1500 R curve, and AMD FreeSync and a HDMI 2.0 port on it. For just £240, crazy, crazy good. And then IPS adds to what VA is capable of, but with much better color accuracy, better viewing angles, with the exception of VA having the edge slightly on contrast, although the new series of IPS black panels are actually getting very, very close to what VA can deliver. You've also got Mini LED, which offers improved contrast by being able to dim smaller parts of the screen, but still can be problematic with haloing or blooming in high contrast areas. But OLED takes that contrast to a whole new level by being able to switch off those individual pixels to create a truly stunning contrast and picture quality where blacks are, well, they're well and truly black. Now, OLED panels are also thinner, therefore they're lighter, and they consume a lot less power. But they're not typically as bright as others, and also can potentially suffer from burn-in, where if you say, you left one image permanently on the screen, then eventually it may burn that image into the screen itself. So, if you're a gamer who just plays, the one game, you might find that the heads-up display, the map and stuff in the corners, is what gets burnt into the display. Now, with that said, each their own here. Everyone has their own opinions on this, but I would say the OLED picture quality is just immeasurably and stunningly better. And the latest generation OLED monitors are now catching up in terms of like the refresh rates too, but not all manufacturers will include burn-in as part of their warranty cover. So you do need to be careful when buying an OLED and just check if burn-in is something you're concerned about in the warranty. Now the problem is you're going to head on to like Reddit, and of course you're going to find people complaining because that's what people do on the internet. But I've used an LG C1 OLED TV for like 4, maybe like 5 years now. It's basically had Fortnite, a few hours every single day for those 4 or 5 years, and there is no burn-in on it. And I'm yet to personally come across an OLED screen that's actually suffered any form of burn-in. Many screens have burn-in protection from them, which was where they're like invisibly shift pixels around or run a pixel cleaning routine before switching off or switching on. And honestly, like the latest generation of OLEDs are so good at this sort of stuff. So next up is the response time, which is essentially how fast what's on screen changes from one color to another. Now, this is also important since you want your screen to react the fastest it can to what's happening in the actual game. And so ideally, the smaller the number here, the better. And many screens nowadays are able to reach as low as 0.03 milliseconds in the response time, which is very, very fast. So those are all the major ones, but there are some, I guess, like, let's call them minor ones that aren't as important as what I've already discussed. There's the matte versus glossy finish debate. Like, many people want a glossy display because that has, the least impact on the image quality. But the downside is that it then reflects other lights around you. But since many people play in the dark and, dark bedrooms, that's not a huge issue for those kind of people. And then you've got the matte finish, which people traditionally haven't liked in a gaming monitor because that, the special matte coating, which makes the displays, less reflective, can then impact the image quality. However, what I will say is that after seeing a lot of anti-glare and matte displays this and last year from the likes of Samsung, well, especially Samsung, their matte coatings are insanely good. Now, we're talking you could play with your monitor right next to a window, and even then, there is barely any noticeable reflections and no noticeable impact on the picture quality. Now, next is monitors which have a curve of some form, and especially when it comes to anything over, say, 38 inches in size, because depending on how far you are sat away from your monitor, things around the edges of the screen can just get pretty difficult to see. You have to lean over to see the edges if it's a widescreen monitor, and you can also get glare and reflections if you don't have a curve. But what do the numbers mean, and how much curve should I be looking for? Now, in terms of how it works, a smaller number means a bigger, deeper curve. So an 800R curve would be a deeper curve than, say, a 1800R curve. Now, my recommendation would be the bigger the monitor, then look for a bigger curve. I saw this on the 49-inch Samsung G9 ultrawide, which has a 1000R curve, which was then totally perfect. And then they released a newer version, a newer OLED version, but with an 1800R curve, which I just bought, I used it, and I just found less comfortable to use due to, like I said, having to lean to see the far edges of the screen. Now, of course, connectivity is something to consider as well. For most PC users, this is going to be either HDMI or DisplayPorts. Consoles will also be HDMI, but if you are hooking up anything else like a Mac, then that's also going to be likely either HDMI or Thunderbolt over USB-C. So in terms of HDMI, you want to aim for something with HDMI 2.1, which is a newer version of HDMI that supports things like higher resolutions and faster refresh rates. But again, just like before, be aware that even though the monitor you're buying right now might have HDMI 2.1, the computer or the graphics card that you're using may very well not support that standard. There's also a similar story with DisplayPort 1.2 over DisplayPort 2.1 as well, so just make sure you've got that covered on your computer and your monitor and your graphics card and all those things combined. Now, some extra features which you may be even less interested in on these monitors are the KVM features. Now, many monitors have the ability to simultaneously connect and display two devices at once, either side by side, which is called picture by picture, or you've got big picture with a little window inside, which is called picture in picture. Now, this can be useful if, switching between maybe a Mac and a PC, or a gaming console and a desktop PC, maybe a work and a personal machine. And some of these also come with the ability to hook up USB devices directly to the monitor. And then as you switch the inputs from one computer to another, then those USB devices also move across with them as well. So you can use one keyboard, one mouse between two computers. There's also built-in speakers. Convenient? Yes. Good? Pretty much no. Across the board, you're just far better off hooking up your own headphones or your own speakers. LED lighting? Also totally pointless. Considering most of us just, push our monitors up against the wall, and the LED lights that are then built into them aren't actually bright enough to, even see the glow reflected on the wall. You're just far better off just buying LED strips and mounting them behind your monitors, if you really want that glowing effect. I've actually got I don't think that's switched on now, but I've actually got the Govee AI Sync box, which actually connects via HDMI and then mirrors what is going on using the much brighter LEDs on the back of my screen. So yeah, that's a much better option here. Now, in terms of which monitors I would personally recommend to you, generally speaking, I'm a huge fan of the Samsung Odyssey and LG Ultra Gear series, particularly this year with the LG lineup, which looks absolutely fantastic with the new models they're just about to launch. But I'm actually going to keep an updated list of my favorite gaming monitors for each budget section in the description down below this video, only because then I can keep it updated as new screens come out over the year. Otherwise, what I say now will be outdated pretty quickly. So yeah, check out all the links down below for all the budgets down below this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Bye-bye.